Hey, Politigals, welcome back to Base Behavior, the show where we say what everyone else is thinking and bring a little bit of sanity back to your week. And I know what you're thinking, Erica, where have you been? It's been since October, since our last episode, and I totally owe you an explanation. Life got incredibly busy with other projects I've been working on, the holidays, work ramping up, and honestly just trying to keep two toddlers healthy through cold and flu season, which, speaking of, I was actually sick all this past weekend, including Valentine's Day, so our romantic evening consisted of me on the couch with a box of tissues while my husband handled bedtime solo. Very glamorous, but I am finally feeling better and I am so excited to be back. You also might notice something different. For the first time, we are switching it to an audio-only format. I've heard from so many of you that you really miss the podcast, and honestly, this was the only way that I was able to bring it back without having an overbearing workload. The whole editing and filming process is just so much simpler like this. So we're going to give it a try and y'all will have to let me know what you think. So let's get into it because after several weeks away, we have got a packed lineup today. First, we're breaking down the SAVE Act, the bill that just passed the House this week that would require proof of citizenship to register to vote and photo ID to actually cast your ballot. Democrats are calling it Jim Crow 2.0, and I'm calling it common sense. And we need to talk about why only one Democrat had the courage to vote for it. Then we're diving into Marco Rubio's speech at the Munich Security Conference this past week, where he got a standing ovation from European leaders for defending Western civilization and American strength. The media spent years telling us that Trump destroyed our alliances, while his Secretary of State just proved them wrong. And then finally, we're going to talk about the massive social media addiction trial happening right now in Los Angeles. Mark Zuckerberg is on the stand, internal documents are being leaked, and the evidence looks a lot like what happened with big tobacco in the 90s, except this time it's our kids' mental health on the line. I am so happy to be back with you guys. Let's get into it. All right, let's start with this because it tells you everything about how Democrats actually view election security. This past Tuesday, the House passed the Save America Act. The vote was 218 to 213. Every single Republican voted yes, and only one Democrat, Representative Henry Cuellar from Texas, had the courage to cross party lines and vote for it. So what is the SAVE Act and why are Democrats losing their minds over it? Let me break it down because this is not complicated. The SAVE Act, which stands for Safeguard American Voter Eligibility, does two main things. First, it requires anyone registering to vote in a federal election to show proof of citizenship. That means a passport, a birth certificate, a naturalization certificate, something that proves you're actually an American citizen. And second, it requires voters to show a photo ID when they cast their ballot, whether that's in person or by mail. That's it. You prove you're a citizen when you register. You prove you're you when you vote. And Democrats are calling this Jim Crow 2.0. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer went on the Senate floor and said this, and I want you to hear his own words.
It has nothing to do with protecting our elections and everything to do with federalizing voter suppression. The SAVE Act is nothing more than Jim Crow 2.0.
Jim Crow, he actually said that. Let me remind you what Jim Crow was. Jim Crow was a system of laws, written by Democrats, by the way, that enforced racial segregation. It was poll taxes, it was literacy tests designed to keep Black Americans from voting. It was systemic state-sponsored racism, and Chuck Schumer is comparing that to asking people to show an ID. Here's what's so infuriating about this. You need an ID for literally everything in this country. You need it to buy alcohol. You need it to get on a plane, to pick up a prescription, to open a bank account. You need it to rent a car or even check into a hotel, to apply for a job. But somehow asking for it to vote is racist. And this isn't just me saying this is ridiculous. The American people agree. A Pew Research poll from last August found that 83% of Americans, that is 8 in 10 people, support requiring a photo ID to vote. That was 95% of Republicans, 71% of Democrats, and 76% of Black voters. So when Democrats say that this is about voter suppression, what they're really saying is we don't care what voters actually want. We're going to call you racist until we get our way. Now, Democrats will tell you that there's no problem that needs fixing, that non-citizen voting isn't happening. But here's the thing, and this is important. Voting by non-citizens is already illegal. It is a federal crime. But if you don't verify citizenship at registration, how would you ever catch it? You wouldn't. That's the point. Democrats say that there's no problem, but how can you say that there's no problem if you're not actually checking? That's like saying there's no crime in your neighborhood because you never look out the window. But wait, there's even more. Like, this gets even crazier. Democrats have found even another angle to scare people, and this one is particularly insulting to women. They're now claiming that the SAVE Act is going to disenfranchise 70 million married women. Yeah, you heard that right. They are saying that if you changed your last name when you got married, that you will not be able to vote. So the argument that they're claiming is that your birth certificate says your maiden name, but your driver's license has your married name, so you won't be able to register to vote because the names don't match. Okay, let's take a deep breath and let's fact check this nonsense. First of all, the SAVE Act does not require your birth certificate to match your current name exactly. That is just factually incorrect. The bill accepts multiple forms of documentation: a passport, a real ID, a military ID, a tribal ID, or yes, a birth certificate. And if your birth certificate has your maiden name, you can simply provide your marriage license alongside it to verify your identity. It's not complicated. This is literally how name changes work for everything else in life. When I changed my name after getting married, I used my marriage license to update my driver's license and my passport and my bank accounts, like everything. It is a standard process that millions of women do every year without issue. So this idea that 70 million women are suddenly going to be turned away at the polls is complete fabrication. But here's what really gets me about this argument, and I say this as a married woman myself. It is deeply insulting because what Democrats are really saying is that they think we're too stupid to figure this out, that we're too helpless to bring a marriage license along with our birth certificate, that we'll just panic and believe whatever scary headline they throw at us without asking a single question. Well, I did ask questions. I actually read the bill, and it does not, I repeat, it does not make it harder for married women to vote. You know what it does do? It makes it harder to commit voter fraud. And that's what Democrats are really afraid of. So the next time you see some viral post claiming that the SAVE Act is going to stop you from voting because you changed your last name, just remember that they're lying to you. They're counting on you not reading the actual bill. They're hoping that you'll be too outraged to notice that their entire argument falls apart the second that you look at the facts. Don't fall for it. So here's my take on this. The SAVE Act is common sense. It is supported by an overwhelming majority of Americans, including Democrats and Black voters. And the fact that Chuck Schumer and House Democrats are calling it Jim Crow and lying about married women being disenfranchised tells you everything you need to know about how dishonest this debate has become. Requiring an ID to vote is not racist, it is not suppression, and it's certainly not going to stop you from voting just because you changed your last name when you got married. It is basic election security. And if Democrats really cared about protecting democracy, they'd be the ones leading the charge on this, not blocking it with lies and fear-mongering. But they're not, because they don't want secure elections. They want elections that they can control. And that should terrify every single American, regardless of party. The bill's now in the Senate, where it faces kind of an uphill battle. Republicans control 53 seats, but they need 60 votes to overcome a Democrat filibuster. And then Schumer's already come out and said that every single Democrat is going to vote against this. So I'm not sure what happens next. We'll have to see. But I think one thing is clear: this fight is not going away because the American people want election integrity, and we're not going to stop pushing for it because Democrats don't like it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you support the SAVE Act? And do you think that Democrats are going to keep coming up with lies just because they don't like this policy? I want to hear from you. Okay, let's talk about something that happened this past Friday that I think got completely buried under other news, but it's actually a huge deal for how the world sees America right now. Marco Rubio gave a speech at the Munich Security Conference, and he got a standing ovation from European leaders. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, who cares about some conference in Germany, let me remind you what the media has been telling us for years. They have told us that Trump destroyed our alliances, that he was isolating America, that he was rude and aggressive, and that European leaders couldn't stand him. They said America first meant America alone, and that our relationships with NATO and Europe were in shambles. So how do you explain this? Trump's Secretary of State, the guy representing Trump's foreign policy, walks into a room of European leaders, defends Western civilization, criticizes their immigration and climate policies, and gets a standing ovation. This doesn't happen if you've destroyed your alliances. This is what happens when you're leading. Let me tell you what Rubio said, because this speech was a masterclass in how to be strong and diplomatic at the same time.
We gather here today as members of a historic alliance, an alliance that saved and changed the world.
So he opened by reminding Europe that America and Europe share a history, that we're not just allies because of overlapping interests, we're allies because we share a civilization, Western civilization, and that bond matters. Then he got real and he called out the United Nations for being basically useless. Take a listen.
The United Nations still has tremendous potential to be a tool for good in the world, but we cannot ignore that today, on the most pressing matters before us, it has no answers and has played virtually no role.
And he didn't stop there, y'all. He listed out all of the things that the UN couldn't solve: the war in Gaza, the war in Ukraine, Iran's nuclear program, the threat from Venezuela. And in each case, he said it was American leadership that stepped in and got it done. Now, some people are clutching their pearls about that. They're saying that it was too aggressive or too dismissive of international institutions. But you know what? He is right. I mean, the UN has been completely useless, and pretending otherwise doesn't help anyone. But here's what I love about this speech. Rubio didn't just criticize. He also laid out a vision. He said America wants to work with Europe. He said we're not trying to dismantle NATO or walk away from our alliances, but he also made it clear that things have to change.
And I'm here today to leave it clear that America is charting the path for a new century of prosperity, and that once again, we want to do it together with you, our cherished allies and our oldest friends.
Compare that to last year. Vice President J.D. Vance gave a speech at the same conference, and he basically scolded European leaders for censorship and suppressing free speech. And while I kind of liked it, the media called it a disaster. They said that it proved Trump was alienating our allies. But Rubio delivered the exact same message, just with a different tone. He was firm. He was confident. He was also respectful, and it worked. Because here's the truth. Europe knows America is right. They know that their immigration policies have been a disaster. They know that they've been relying on the U.S. military for decades while underfunding their own defense. They know that climate extremism is killing their economies, but they needed someone to say it in a way that didn't feel like a lecture, and I think Rubio did that. Now, I want to be clear, this isn't about being nicer to Europe. This is about being smart. Because when you're trying to lead, you don't just tell people what to do. You remind them why it matters. You appeal to shared values. You make them want to follow you. And that's what Rubio did. He said, we share a history, we share a civilization, and we're stronger when we stand together. But standing together doesn't mean America carries all the weight while Europe lectures us on climate change. The reaction has been overwhelmingly positive. EU officials called the speech reassuring. The German defense minister said that he appreciated the reassuring tone and that Rubio made it clear that they want to face the future together. Even critics have to admit that it was effective. And you know what that tells me? It tells me that the Trump administration is learning, that they're figuring out how to take the America First message and present it in a way that builds alliances instead of burning bridges. Because let's be honest, Trump's foreign policy instincts are right. We should prioritize American interest. We should demand that NATO countries pay their fair share. We should call out the UN when it is useless. But how you say it matters, and Rubio just proved that you can be unapologetically pro-America, call out bad policies, and still get a standing ovation from the people that you are criticizing. This is what Republican foreign policy should look like going into 2028. Strong, confident, like rooted in shared values, but not apologetic. Because at the end of the day, the world needs American leadership. Europe knows it. Asia knows it. Even our adversaries know it. And speeches like this remind everyone why. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think that Rubio struck the right tone? And does this change how you view Trump's foreign policy approach? I want to hear from you guys. All right, before we dive into our next story, I wanted to take a quick minute to share something that I'm really excited about because this has been in the works for months and it finally launched this last week. I opened the Politics for Her store. I have been so frustrated for so long trying to find conservative apparel that's actually cute and for women. Like, I want to wear something that represents my values, but I don't want to look like I'm walking around in a campaign t-shirt or something. I want feminine, I want subtle, I want something I can wear to the grocery store or just pick up my kids from daycare without it being this loud, in-your-face political statement. And I just couldn't find that anywhere. So I decided to make it myself. So we've got graphic tees and hats and stickers, all designed with conservative women in mind. The kind of designs that stand up for your values without screaming them from across the parking lot. Things that are cute and actually something that you would want to wear. I've been working on this project for months because I wanted to create something that I'd actually be proud to wear and that you'd be excited to own. So if you're interested, head over to politicsforherstore.com and check it out. I'd love to hear what you think. And if there's something that you'd love to see in the store that's not there yet, let me know in the comments because I'm already working on new designs. All right, let's get into our third and final story because this one is heavy, but it is so important, especially if you are a parent. Okay, we have to talk about what is happening right now in a Los Angeles courtroom because if you are a parent, you need to be paying attention to this. Meta and YouTube are on trial, and the question being asked is simple. Did these companies deliberately engineer their platforms to addict children? This isn't some fringe lawsuit brought by one angry parent. This is a massive case. There are over 2,200 lawsuits filed by parents and school districts and 42 state attorneys general. TikTok and Snapchat were originally named in the suit, but they actually settled last month for an undisclosed amount before the trial even started, which, by the way, tells you everything you need to know about how strong the evidence is. The trial started last week in Los Angeles Superior Court, and the plaintiff in this first case is a 20-year-old woman being referred to as KGM. She started using Instagram and YouTube when she was 10 years old, and according to the lawsuit, the features on these platforms like infinite scroll and autoplay videos, the like buttons, the notifications, the beauty filters left her addicted. She developed severe anxiety, depression, body dysmorphia, engaged in self-harm, and had suicidal thoughts. And her lawyers are arguing that Meta and YouTube knew that this would happen, that they designed it that way on purpose. Mark Zuckerberg is expected to testify this week, and Instagram CEO Adam Mosseri already testified this past Wednesday, and the evidence that's coming out is damning. Let me tell you what we've learned so far. So Adam Mosseri got on the stand and was immediately confronted with his own words. In a 2020 podcast interview, he said, and I'm quoting him, "There is such a thing as being addicted to a social media platform." But on the stand, he backtracked. He said that he misspoke. He said he wasn't careful with his words. He told the jury that there's a difference between clinical addiction and problematic use. Okay, so let me get this straight. You admitted on a podcast that people get addicted to your platform, but now under oath, in front of a jury, you're saying it's just problematic use. I mean, come on. And then the internal emails started coming out. There was an email chain from 2019 and 2020 where Meta's vice president of product design, Margaret Gold Stewart, was pushing to ban beauty filters, the ones that change your nose and your lips and like your entire face. She wanted them banned because they knew they were causing harm. They knew that kids were developing body dysmorphia. But guess what happened? Another Meta executive, John Hageman, pushed back. He said, and I'm quoting the email here, that banning banning those filters would, quote, limit our ability to be competitive in Asian markets. So they knew it was harmful, but they kept it anyway because profits mattered more than kids' mental health. And it gets worse. Andrew Bosworth, Meta's chief technology officer, sent an email to Mark Zuckerberg about the beauty filter issue. And Zuckerberg responded saying that he was concerned about whether we have good enough data that this represents real harm. Let that sink in. They had evidence that it was causing harm, and instead of pulling the feature, Zuckerberg wanted more data, as if kids' suffering wasn't enough. There's also an internal Instagram employee who described what they were doing in an email. They said, and again, I'm quoting the email, "People are binging on IG so much they can't feel the reward anymore. We're basically pushers." Pushers, like drug dealers. And that's not an exaggeration because the lawsuit lays it out clearly. Meta and YouTube borrowed design features from slot machines and big tobacco. They hired neuroscientists to figure out how to maximize dopamine hits. They studied addiction, and then they weaponized it against children. Now, Meta's defense is that KGM had other issues, that she had a difficult home life, that she was seeing therapists before she even started using Instagram. And sure, maybe that's true, but here's the thing, that doesn't mean Instagram didn't make it worse. If you take a kid who's already struggling and you hand them a platform that's designed to keep them scrolling for hours, that's designed to make them compare themselves to impossible beauty standards, that's designed to feed them an endless stream of content that triggers anxiety and depression, you are not helping. You are making it exponentially worse. And that's exactly what the plaintiffs are arguing. Now, here is where this gets really interesting, because this playbook, we've seen it before. In 1994, the CEO of all 7 major tobacco companies sat in front of Congress and were asked, under oath, whether they believed nicotine was addictive. And one by one, they all said the same thing. I believe nicotine is not addictive.
Let me ask you first, and I'd like to just go down the row, whether each of you believes that nicotine is not addictive. I heard virtually all of you touch on it, and just yes or no. Do you believe nicotine is not addictive?
I believe nicotine is not addictive, yes.
Mr. Johnston.
Congressman, cigarettes and nicotine clearly do not meet the classic definitions of addiction. There is no intoxication.
We'll take that as a no, and again, time is short. If you could just, I think each of you believe nicotine is not addictive. We just would like to have this for the record.
I don't believe that nicotine or our products are addictive.
I believe nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
And I too believe that nicotine is not addictive.
That moment became one of the most infamous lies in American history because internal documents later proved that they knew cigarettes were addictive. They had the research, they had the memos. A 1963 Brown and Williamson memo literally said that they were, quote, selling nicotine, an addictive drug. They engineered it that way. They manipulated nicotine levels to increase addiction, and then they lied about it for decades. And what happened? It led to a $250 billion settlement. It destroyed the credibility of the entire tobacco industry. It changed how we regulate cigarettes forever. And now we are watching the exact same thing play out with big tech. Just like big tobacco, these companies designed their products to maximize addiction. Just like big tobacco, they have internal documents proving they knew it was harmful. Just like big tobacco, they are sitting in front of the public, whether it's Congress or a courtroom, and denying it. I mean, the parallels are impossible to ignore. This isn't about being anti-technology. And I'm not saying that we need to ban social media. I'm not even saying take your kid's phone away. But what I am saying is this. When a company hires neuroscientists to figure out how to make kids unable to put their phones down, when they have internal emails calling themselves pushers, when they know that their beauty filters are causing body dysmorphia and they keep them anyway because it helps them compete in Asian markets, case, that is not a company that deserves the benefit of the doubt. That is a company that needs to be held accountable. And that's exactly what this trial is about. The jury will decide whether Instagram was a substantial factor in KGM's mental health struggles, but this case is bigger than one plaintiff. This is a bellwether trial, meaning whatever happens here will set the precedent for thousands of other cases. If the jury finds Meta and YouTube liable, it could change everything. It could force these companies to redesign their platforms. It could lead to massive settlements, just like Big Tobacco. It could finally give parents the tools and protections that we have been begging for. But if they win, it sends a message that companies can addict our kids, profit off of our suffering, and face zero consequences. So I will be watching this trial closely, and I think that every parent should do the same. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think that social media companies should be held accountable for addicting kids? Or do you think it's on the parents that they just need to take the kids' phones away? I want to hear from you. Okay, that is it for this week's episode of Based Behavior. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I cannot tell you how good it feels to be back behind the mic talking to you all. I have missed this so much. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, go ahead and follow the show there and leave a 5-star review. That's how we reach more conservative women and grow this community of politigals who are ready to call out the lies that the left never thought we would question. And speaking of next week, I want to bring back Hot Take Hotline, but I need your submissions. So if you've got a burning question about dating or parenting or politics, career, family, anything, drop it in the comments or DM me on Instagram at politicsforher. I want to hear what's on your mind, what you're struggling with, what you're fired up about. Send them my way and I will answer them in next week's episode. Oh, and don't forget to check out the Politics for Her store that I mentioned at politicsforherstore.com. I'm so proud of what we built, and I think that you guys are going to love everything. I'm Erica Chwenka from Politics for Her, and I will see you next Monday for more Based Behavior.